Patient 1. My entire life is a sin. From the moment I defiled my mother's body in the delivery room to the countless times I forgot to wash my hands before making love. Patient 2. It's like I'm the world's most disgusting porta-john. People would rather crap in public than take a dump in me. If you think the above quotes are musings of the self-pitying failures, you'd be very, very wrong. Patient 1 is a retired Air Force colonel, judged to be of rock-solid mental health after withering battery of tests designed by my team. Patient 2 is a superb athlete, an Olympic medal winner with zero psychiatric issues. Until now. Indeed, as I record this, both patients suffer from major depressive disorder characterized by abject lethargy and constant risk of self-harm. Why? Both interviews were conducted after exposure to Substance X, a compound aimed at triggering an enemy soldier's an acutely depressed state. Yes, hardened warriors lose the will to fight, casting aside their weapons and begging for mercy. Substance X was created by me. My name is withheld. I am a distinguished scientist whose moral compass went awry in designing a weapon aimed at ending for all time further hot wars. I'm revealing this publicly because my device has fallen into malevolent hands. The march towards war without death is being perverted by forces beyond my control. Therefore, I have adopted a position similar to that of Daniel Ellsberg when he released the Pentagon Papers in 1971. Wrongdoing must be exposed, even at great personal risk. That's why I'm penning this open letter to all American citizens of good faith. Background: I'm a Nobel Prize nominated scientist, specializing in the field of psychiatric warfare. I hate war. But after years of watching the body count rise, I was forced to admit that war was deeply embedded in the human psyche. The desire to fight is an integral part of who we are, beginning with "my dad can beat up your dad" and ending with the atomic bomb, the most destructive weapon of war yet devised. Given that, the issue, as I saw it, was to devise a weapon that allowed nations to act on this primitive impulse while killing no one. For a long time, it was a low-budget labour of love. Then, as luck would have it, I received a call from a psych war startup in late 2018. The principals, ex-military, ex-intelligence insiders, had gotten wind of my project. Their stated goal was to determine if Substance X was scalable, and if so, to market the product internationally. I jumped at the chance to join their distinguished team. Working with these guys, many of whom I knew from previous classified endeavours, would allow me to play an instrumental role in bringing about permanent world peace. Plus, I was offered a healthy portfolio of stock options that would make me a near billionaire should the company succeed in going public. That I succumbed to such a base need, I'm truly ashamed. I am less man and more earthworm because of it, an earthworm engorged with the rotted fruit of its labours. I was flown by private jet to the firm's headquarters. Security there was tight, much more so than at Theranos and other infamous startups. How tight? All those entering the building, including me, were required to submit a rectal exam and a colonoscopy in order to ensure nothing was smuggled via the lowest reaches of the digestive system. After 2 hours of embarrassing recovery, followed by a gourmet meal, I joined a select group gathered in the otherwise empty company auditorium. They had come to hear my presentation. I was ushered on stage, fitted with an omnidirectional mic, and asked to proceed. Anxious, for I did not know how this elite audience would react, I began my sales pitch. Ladies and gentlemen, we have entered a new age where the general public is repulsed by wanton killing on a mass scale. Therefore, in order to defeat an enemy while maintaining public support, We need a way to incapacitate hostile troops while shedding minimal blood. But why clinical depression? Why a depression bomb, to coin a phrase? Good question. I nodded at a video screen behind me. The slideshow had been hastily assembled. The word schizophrenia appeared, highlighted on either side by red lightning bolts and kaleidoscopic whirls. Schizophrenia was ruled out after student volunteers sprayed with my proprietary substance exhibited a wide range of unpredictable behaviours. This I decidedly did not want. A heavily armed yet erratic enemy force is not a desirable outcome. A bipolar weapon had similar problems, prompting study subjects in the up phase to feel they were impervious to harm. One individual, in such an agitated state, became convinced that an army of one, namely him, could defeat a battalion of some 300 to 800 enemy soldiers. A dose of clinical depression, on the other hand, instilled the volunteers a sense of hopelessness, lethargy, and abject despair. A quiz administered shortly afterwards indicated that 95% of the subjects felt that nothing in life was worth fighting for. The implications, I said, as those words appeared on the screen, are that in a wartime setting, similarly disheartened enemy troops could be taken prisoner with minimal struggle. Once behind barbed wire in outdoor camps, they could be administered a reviving dose of the generic SSRI. Back to psychiatric baseline, they could then be put to productive use in work camps until all their fellow hostiles were dosed and the conflict came to a swift end, with a clear victor yet minimal casualties on both sides. After a tense pause, during which sweat dripped from my brow in a humiliating close-up on the video screen, the entire audience rose as one and began clapping and hooting with scattered shouts of "Hear, hear!" Should I take that as a signal you want me to move ahead? I asked, fighting back tears. My dream of bloodless wars was about to take a giant step towards becoming a reality. Yes, immediately, if not sooner. A former NSA insider cracked wise to gales of laughter from the ebullient throng. In short order, I was issued luxury living quarters on company grounds, a crack staff, unlimited budget, and, yes, stock options, after my attorney intervened. Should the company go public, I plan to donate 50% of my personal proceeds to the National Humane Society in honour of my deceased wife, a dog lover and champion of orphaned potbelly pigs, of which we had 15 until she suffered cardiac arrest while shoveling a veritable mountain of hog mess. Filthy swine, I should have butchered them all. Sorry, but I've been prone to volcanic outbursts of late, for reasons you shall soon understand. 2 frenetic days later, I began the next research phase. This time, due to the top-secret nature of the undertaking, study subjects were the creme de la creme of national security personnel. Men and women of high accomplishment and iron will, courageous volunteers willing to suffer weapons-grade despair until the administration of an antidote in the form of a high-octane, inhalable SSRI. The first session was a failure, which shamed me to no end. I felt like a naked man being laughed at by priests. I stationed the volunteers in a safe room, equipped with overhead sprinklers that, when an assistant turned them on, emitted a fine spray of Substance X, the same mixture I'd administered to college students with heartening results. I then waited for the elite military subjects to manifest the symptoms of major depressive disorder. Unfortunately, I had underestimated their ability to resist the power of the disheartening spray. They'd become sad, but not despondent to the point of incapacitating self-hate. The executive team funding my work was not happy. I was informed that, if an effective weapon was not created by the end of the week, my stock options would be halved. Under monumental pressure to achieve better results, I laboured for 96 hours straight to develop a fire extinguisher type weapon that blasted a thick fog of Substance X concentrate. My lab assistants pitched in to the point of exhaustion. Fighting back sleep, we donned airtight protective gear, entered the safe room and sprayed a billowing cloud of Substance X until the makeshift weapon was emptied. We then exited, showered, and removed our cumbersome suits. Pulling on slacks, I hurried in my bare feet to an observation window and waited anxiously for the cloud to subside. The project's future was at stake. I knew that the demanding investors would pull the plug if significant progress had not been made. I was filled with a strange mixture of elation and sorrow when it became clear that the volunteers behind the glass were overcome with existential gloom. Elated that the experiment had worked, sorrowful that true American heroes had been reduced to such a pathetic state. They stood, catatonic, unable to make eye contact or utter a word. Then, one by one, as if Substance X was leaching into their very souls, these selfless patriots curled up on the floor, squealing like abandoned piglets marked for imminent slaughter. I alerted my corporate masters, who raced into the lab, clapping each other on the back. Some babbled on their phones. For all I knew, they were ordering fresh Lamborghinis or bigger mansions than they already possessed. At this, my spirits plunged. I now hated myself for selling a non-lethal but incapacitating weapon of war to mere profiteers. Disgusted, I wanted out. However, my corporate overseers had me by the financial balls. I'd already made a large cash donation to the non-profit I'd established in my beloved wife's memory. If I pulled out of the Depression Project now, my stock options would be taken away. I'd be penniless, and, with my reputation ruined, I'd be unemployable as anything but a greeter at Walmart. So, I answered yes when the CEO asked me to see if I could replicate the results in a variety of novel settings. After choking down a celebratory dinner, I went back to work. Day followed wretched day. Repeatedly, I was ordered to increase the dosage. As time went by, it became more and more difficult to justify the anguish I was putting my subjects through. It broke my heart to see these gallant men and women beg for sharp knives in order to cut their own throats. I refused further gourmet meals, aka bribes. I rapidly began losing weight. My face broke out from all the unrelenting stress. It was a hellish routine, saturating the safe room with new formulations of Substance X, taking notes as America's heroes fell apart, then exiting and thoroughly cleaning my protective gear. Mentally spent, I'd trudge upstairs to the executive suite and file my nightly oral report, which always seemed to meet with frowns and muttered disapproval. I began to suspect that management was taking actions behind my back. A misplaced file here, a notebook with a page missing. Who was entering the locked lab without my permission? What were they up to? The constant speculation made me wary, yet I'd lie awake at night, unable to close my eyes. My moral crisis reached a peak when a study participant, a highly disciplined martial arts wonder, was found hanging from his black belt after another round of Substance X. Fortunately, he was quickly cut down. Coughing and gagging, he survived. While many in top management high-fived this grotesque display of Substance X's supersized effectiveness, I was bothered to no end. Racked by guilt, I began staying in bed all day, unwilling to set foot in the lab. My mind became a rat's nest of racing thoughts. I developed agonizing aches and pains. And then came the final straw. The antidote stopped working. One night, Despite countless doses of inhalable SSRIs, the fallen heroes remained critically morbid in mind and spirit. Management, indeed, had been labouring mightily behind my back to neutralise the effectiveness of any and all antidepressants. That's right, Prozac, Etel, no longer worked. My top drawer study subjects had been relegated to eternal mental agony. Many were institutionalised in a private psychiatric hospital owned at arm's length by the startup. I protested to no avail. It soon became clear that the company had misused my intellectual property for its own reprehensible ends. I was of no more value to them than a flip phone. Neither was my mission for world peace. While I've been allowed to remain in my luxury apartment, I haven't the energy to rise from the floor. I live in perpetual darkness with no hope of feeling like myself again. How can I state that with such certainty? Well, you see, I found a deliberate tear in my protective suit yesterday. For my perceived disloyalty, I'd been exposed to a toxic dose of the new and improved Substance X, for which there was no cure. My mind, my body, my soul are afflicted with unceasing despair. There's a gun on the coffee table and a recorder in my hand. With any luck, I will be able to resist the oblivion long enough to finish recording this open letter, to warn you, to warn every living soul of the true horror to come. The startup was just sold to a malevolent consortium of hedge fund managers. I'm now a rich man. But the hedge fund guys and gals, well, I hear they're quietly equipping hundreds of crop dusters with Substance X weaponry. The alleged goal is to fog major cities, to conduct a war of depression and despair against the American people, to strengthen the grip they have over our lives. The possibility that someone will hear this gives me hope, a reason to keep a firm grip on the recorder, to keep talking, to never stop until a new day dawns. Talking is my Prozac, figuratively speaking. What's yours?